Hi everybody, welcome back. This is Phil, and I want to show you some flower sack sketching that I did today. This is like my opening rough page here, again to show some visual weight and movement. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another demo for you. I put a little bit of tone behind it just to make it stand out off the white paper. I'm going to start sketching here. So first off, as I start here, I'm going to do a quick demo here and talk about what not to do when you start sketching on your flower sack, which is really easy. And then I'm just going to sit and sketch a couple ideas that come out of my brain. Okay, so let's start here. Just remember the purpose of us sketching flower sacks. It's really funny because we live in a day and age where people are like hooked and addicted to their iPhones and cell phones in general, and they don't see any purpose for doing some simple sketches sometimes. And there's a purpose for us to sketch the flower sacks, as it has to do with visual weight, it has to do with creativity, movement, imagination, and especially understanding different tiers of animation. Okay, in terms of like primary animation, secondary animation, construction, line of action. So this is what we don't want to do right here. We don't want to have all our lines being horizontal when we're stacking inside a sketch of a bag. Okay. That's okay to start. The problem is if you're aware of it in the beginning, you realize like, hey, I don't want to have these horizontal lines all the time. What I want to do is I want to be able to come back onto my piece, and I want to generate multiple lines and lines of action to make things a little bit more interesting and appealing to the viewer. So, you know, I sort of start different ways, and probably because I have a little bit more drawing mileage than the average person. So sometimes I usually start with a head ball. Sometimes I start with a center ball for the mass. And then, you know, I like to stretch out a little bit of the corners of the bag to make them look like feet. And so that's one of the things that you start to do when you're in this process, is you start taking advantage of, you know, how to distort these little shapes. And that right there in its essence is one of the basics of character design, is how do we get in and squash and stretch and distort shape, but still have something that feels, that has construction, that has mass, that has solidity. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do with this overall assignment. So it's just funny because I know as an artist myself who's worked in entertainment for years, and also as an instructor, you know, I notice kids want to jump above and beyond and get into, you know, this finalized characters that they see on Pinterest and all the Photoshop rendering, when they're missing a lot of the basics about understanding construction and, you know, just bringing the whole sketch together for the viewer to see. And so, you know, those of you that have been watching the lectures that I put up on YouTube, you know, that's a big part of what we talk about, is understanding, you know, form and construction and bringing everything together and getting a sense on how all those elements read. Okay, so I'm just going to keep sketching here. And what I do is sometimes I have a little bit of a vision of where I'm going, and then I just throw down that mass shape for like the belly of the bag. And then I like to come back on, sort of sketch out the position of the head, and then try to imagine. And then you just sort of get a feel for the drawing. You get a feeling if it's going in the right direction, or if there's something you want to change, or how can you alter it and maybe add a little bit more to it, or whatever it might be, you know. So I definitely like the thought of, you know, I mentioned this on the class blog, and part of the assignment is just outside of the bag. How is the bag doing or interacting with something is huge. You know, so for example, is the bag running? Is it looking over a cliff? Is it? I'll throw a couple more ideas out to you as I'm sketching here. So let me stop talking for a minute. I wanted to mention, somebody recently made a comment on the YouTube site and said, "Gosh, you yell a lot." And it sort of bugged me a little bit that someone would make a comment like that. And I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, there's sort of two reasons for that. Number one, okay, I'm Greek. And if you know any Greek people or Greek families, the Greek language is a very loud language, and we are very, like most Mediterraneans, very boisterous people. So if you grew up in the United States and you've never been outside of this country and out of the continent, and you've never been to Europe or other countries, well, you're going to be a little limited on your exposure to how other people talk and work and live and commute and architecture and all that type of stuff. So, you know, yeah, I'm a little loud. My voice always projects. And it's part of it is part of a Greek cultural aspect. Having a dad who is here from Greece, English is his fourth language. He speaks Greek, French, and Italian. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how I am. The other problem I have is that I'm teaching to a bunch of boneheads sometimes. I have some really good students, and then I have students that come sit in my class that jump on their iPhone or they fall asleep, and then I have to raise my voice and I have to project it a little louder at times to get people's attention. And that's just the way it is. That's part of teaching, is you have to be able to project your voice over other people and get people's attention and get them to get focused. Anyway, enough of that said and done. So, but I do have, this is a new semester for me. I took a little bit of a break, and I didn't draw as much. I did do some demos and I recorded them. I just didn't post them because I was waiting to do the editing and stuff. And I just wanted to spend some time with family. And I spent a lot of time in my sketchbook going out and drawing. And so anyway, this is the idea I had, is what if we had a bag who's like sitting on this little rock, this little cliff edge of some kind, and he's fishing, So what's funny is that I know it might be weird for you as students to draw a character holding an item, that does not have hands. But I happen to work for VeggieTales, and when I worked for VeggieTales, which are the big idea people, Bob and Larry, okay, our characters did not have hands, and so we had tomatoes and cucumbers and gourds and all kinds of different vegetables that did not have hands, who would grab items and use them, and that was just part of the whole VeggieTale lineage. In fact, while I'm sketching here, I'll just tell you a quick story. I went to work for VeggieTales from 2000 to 2004, and when I worked for them, it was really cool. I got to meet the owners who created the whole idea. But here's a little fact, is that back in the day, in the 90s, when Mike Naraki and Phil Vischer created the VeggieTale property, they originally were going to do candy bars. And then when they were talking about having this discussion in their basement, talking about doing candy bars, one of the moms heard them and yelled downstairs and said, if you do candy bars, everybody will hate you. You should do something healthy like vegetables. So they decided to do healthy, sort of Christian and secular based stories on good decisions that people should make in their life for kids, to help sort of, kids think about things that they should be doing, that the right and the wrong value select. Even though it is more of a Christian property, it's also geared towards, people of all different faiths and backgrounds. So it was a really fantastic project to work on, and was a great studio to be at. I really had a wonderful time being there. Some people don't even know that property, VeggieTales, was actually the highest selling, grossing home VHS and DVD from 1994 to, I believe, about 2003 or 4. It grossed well over $98 million in sales, which is absolutely amazing. So it was really cool to get to go work for them. I got to draw. I mainly drew environments. I worked on a couple of their feature film projects. I worked on DVD projects. I worked in graphic design and branding, coming up with ideas for backpacks and, kids items and stuff like that. So anyway, what I'm going to do is, I realized I've been doing these demos, putting them up online, starting to get a cool following, which is pretty neat because I haven't really advertised. Haven't been putting any of my sketches up on Instagram, which I need to start doing as well. But what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to do another demo pretty soon on who I am, my background, and show you a bunch of my work and talk about what I've done, what I do for studio work, So even though I'm a full-time teacher, I've worked in animation for over 16, going on 17 years. I have 4 months off out of teaching, and then I go back and I usually do freelance work or work full-time for studios, doing everything from theme park design down to character design, down to background design, environments, digital painting, rough Maya sets, you name it. So I'll show you some of that work in another demo coming up here. Okay, so anyway, so what I'm thinking of is interaction right now. I like the idea of the bag up on the top, and he's got the fishing pole. I like the idea of the bag's like tired, he's sitting against a wall. So I threw that drop shadow in, and I thought this would be cool. What if the bag's like sitting in front of this little plant that he has, and maybe he's looking at the plant, maybe he sees a bug on it or something. That's the interaction type, and you can see what's starting to develop in my sketch. It's not just the bag and the visual weight, but it's the use of, number one, the body line and gesture, and then it's also the use of little teeny storytelling attributes that add a little inch to the story. So these little inches add up to be feet. And so having the plant there, having the bag sort of tilted a little bit of an angle, so let's talk about primary and secondary and perhaps tertiary design, okay? The primary design is the bag itself. It's the weight of the bag, okay? The secondary design, secondary animation would be the flops of the ears and the feet and what they're doing. The tertiary interaction would be the little flower pot or a particular or the little fly there or another little bug that helps indicate either part of the environment or the situation of what's happening with part of the the flower sack. Okay, so those are things to think about whenever we're drawing. So everything I just mentioned is not just a principle in drawing a flower sack. It is a principle in character design. It is an extremely important principle on becoming a good designer. And note that word. I was talking to a student the other day who said, "Hey Phil, what's the difference between an art class and a design class?" And I just explained it. In a lot of art classes, you're free to just draw and make whatever you want. But if you get the name like sketching for animators and illustrators, or you have the word design in there that's more specific, your job is to communicate a particular emotion or feel to your viewer. That's it. So don't ask me why. This doesn't quite look right, but I had the idea of this bag standing up, like looking down on like a bug or something. And it's like got like this huge bottom area, or we should say behind or buttocks, right? Or ass, whatever you want to call it, right? So, I mean, I just had this idea. Maybe the legs have come together and they're perking up like, oh my God, something on the floor. And so, by the way, another golden hint, what I just said there, something that I learned from working on a bunch of different productions with character designers and other artists, is the voice I did, okay? When you do voices and or look into a mirror and imagine what the character is doing, it'll be that much easier for you to communicate what the character is feeling. And it's a proven fact, okay? So the thought and actually this happened because I happened to go out with my family this weekend. And we have a little place out by the California River, on the Colorado River, I should say. And we were out there, and I looked over, and someone saw a giant tarantula. And so we went outside, and all the women around us, like all the moms and stuff, like jumped up on like 2 feet like this. But they wanted to get closer because they were interested to see the tarantula. But they wanted to be far enough where they couldn't get. They kept saying, "Oh, we're going to get bit, or it's going to bite us." And we're like, well, tarantulas, at least the ones in California that we have, they're not poisonous. So that's what gave me that idea right there. So, I'm just going to try to sketch, think of particular ideas, I did have another idea, but I didn't put it in this sketch series of flower sacks here, was a bag holding props trying to do something. For example, what would a flower sack look like if he had his upper ear holding like the fly swatter and he was trying to swat a fly, okay? Engaging props. So what about a flower sack on top of his skateboard? Okay, what about a flower sack carrying a bowling ball on top of his head? What about a flower sack trying to throw that bowling ball? What about a flower sack that works at UPS carrying a bunch of boxes? That would be another great interaction, because then what I'm doing is sort of along that, what I mentioned, that tertiary involvement. That third step is I'm adding, here I was thinking about a bag doing a handstand, let's say, okay? And the feet going different ways, trying to balance them, okay? So these are all little elements that come together, right? So that tertiary, if I have a flower sack interacting with something else that has weight, that's going to offset the weight of the character. So if you're carrying, just imagine yourself, right? If you ever had to pick up something heavy like a suitcase and walk with it in an airport, you have to shift over your body weight in order to carry that heavy bag. So your body is set up on a series of natural equilibriums, and you have to now shift your weight to the right to pick up a 30-pound bag, right? Right. So that's sort of the step I was going for. Here, I sketched the belly, and my thought was, what if a sack is laying down reading a book? Okay, so I started with the belly. I'm going to sketch in the feet here. The feet are an important part as attachment to part of that belly, because the feet help indicate what side of the bag that they're on. So it gives me a depth feeling. So For example, by adding this foot here on the left, if I put one right here, you can see therefore the center line going down the middle of the bag because it would be between the feet line, which then echoes part of the belly shape, which then also brings you back to part of the head ball shape. And that head ball shape right now is just a real simple ball with just the ears added attached. Okay, that's it. There's no eyes, but I'm going to cheat here because he's reading, and I'm going to put a pair of reading glasses on the character, which you could do that. I'm not adding eyes or mouth, okay, or anything else. He's just sitting here with reading glasses on, reading a book. Interaction, small props, easy things that might adjust part of the body's, or excuse me, the flour sac body's weight, okay? Man, I love this type of sketching. I really do. I need to do this more often. It's so much fun just to sit down and produce something like this because you get great outcomes. And even for myself, it allows me to get more in depth into the sketching and part of the visual drawing process. And part of that process is related to cognitive learning processes where you are imagining something in your head and transferring it onto paper. And to a lot of my students that are new, especially at a college level, that seems really absurd and crazy, but that's why we draw in sketchbook so much, is the more you draw, the more you sketch, the better you get at doing that type of drawing, where you can look at something, visualize it, bring it into your memory, or into your visual memory, and then exaggerate on it and draw it out on paper by sending signals from your brain to your hand, right? That's all part of a sketch process. And even though my students hate to admit it, the only way you get better at that is from constant sketching and filling up sketchbook pages. Absolutely. All right. I didn't like that one, so I'm going to start over here. Yeah, that's cool. If I have a wall here, maybe I can have the bag interacting with the wall. Aha. So maybe something a little similar to what I just did, but maybe now the character is sitting against the wall. So the midsection is bending, or wait, you know what though? Actually, when I was sketching this, I was thinking about the character being maybe upside down, You ever seen kids do that? They're like sitting in a bed next to a wall, and sometimes they're sitting like partially upside down where their upper body's elevated. So that's what I was sort of thinking about doing here. Okay. All right. And put a little sideline in there. Maybe let me try that again. Get the sideline in there along part of the side. Part of it's going to tuck around it, but it just allows me to indicate a seam line down the side, which helps with shape and form. All right, let's do something else here. See if we can squeeze one in the space. Erase a little bit of this. Was thinking maybe this guy's got something in his hands, maybe a newspaper or something else similar. Let me just get this body line down here. I want to get a nice smooth sort of flowing line from that head ball shape. Let me see, what should I put in here? Maybe actually a book would still fit, maybe pretty good. Maybe sitting up more against a wall with like a book type of thing. Could do the newspaper, but I don't have much room between the belly and the head ball shape there. I'm sort of squashed in my sketch here. But the other purpose of what I was doing here is I was also trying to show my students And I tell a student, fill your page of sketches. And they always come back and they go, well, how many sketches do you want me to draw? And I'm like, dude, just fill the page. Just look at it. If you can look at it and go, hey, I understand how to draw a flour sack and understand weight and visual proportion, then you've succeeded. If you go back in your drawing and go, wow, I sort of chinched it and I only put 5 images down, I didn't really try. You gotta analyze that, and you have to tell yourself that, right? That's just part of what you have to do. It's that simple. But I get it when students ask that stuff, and we try to do 4 to 5 pages of sketchbook a week, which is basically, it's less than a page a day over a week. And want students to have that random sketching inside their book. And just imagine if you did we should have a thing of flour sacks in action, right? I mean, imagine how much you would learn from that constant sketching. You would learn so much about posing and gesture. In fact, another cool exercise would be, what if you drew other base objects you might see and made them sort of come alive? For example, what if you had a teacup, or what if you had, teacup is rigid and stiff, but how would you draw a teacup showing emotion, right? So what about a cardboard box? That could work. What if you had a cardboard box that you could squash in and out and squash and stretch, and you could show a flour sack and a cardboard box interacting with each other, doing things? I think that would be a pretty successful, project. Here I was imagining, I was trying to think about something with walking. So I was thinking about a flour sack that's maybe stepping over like a series of rocks, or trying to step above and jump up to the next one, which has also given me the idea of maybe doing stairs too. So I want to change that curve here to show his leg like reaching, to step over that little rock formation underneath him. It's pretty cool. I like that. He's like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna step over. I know I can. All right, sorry about that, guys. I'm back here. What happened is my Wacom tablet driver for the Cintiq here at school crashed, and it does this sometimes where it locks up and I can't use it. And I think it's not a Windows problem, but we have servers here at school. I think it doesn't mesh with the server software and something else going on, and so I had to just restart my machine, save my files, and come back to what I was working on. So sorry about that. Okay, had a little bit of a goof there, and I kept sketching for a minute, and I said, "Uh-oh, I got to turn the recorder back on," and had a lot of problems lately with the Wacom driver working correctly. It tends to be just like buggy a little bit. It crashes for some reason in Windows quite a bit, but I don't know. I don't have any problems at home. At home, I have 2 systems. I work on a Mac for painting, and I have a PC, a Box Tech machine that I use for drawing in Maya and rendering. So it tends to work fine on this machine here. So here I was thinking about, that start with the base weight here, try to get the legs in here, that bag, stepping over a series of stairs, walking. Try to get that weight like it's, like your weight's pulling you back a little bit on your butt, and then like he's trying to throw his other foot forward. So you can see I'm not going to call it cheating. I'm improvising on the legs and the ears at times. The legs starting to look like little legs you might see like on Porky the Pig, right? Well, that's how they start to evolve, by having these little angles and cuts in them. it starts to change part of the way that the character is working and he's adjusting and walking. You have to do that. That's, part of design is improvising and figuring out solutions to make things work, with a linear format. And I like this sketch. It looks like he's sort of throwing his leg up. He's got a nice little gesture in there. I got the weight behind him. Looks like he's had a couple too many cheeseburgers there, right? And, the ears are popping up. I think it's working good. Okay. Let's see if I can squeeze maybe a couple more, and we're going to wrap it up in just like probably another like 7-8 minutes or so. All right. What should I sketch in here? Don't have much room, but I want to fill my page, so I'm going to figure out something to splice in here. Maybe a little edge, cliff, and a character looking over the cliff is what I'm thinking. See if I can get the head to turn a little. Yeah, with the ear facing this way. See, that's what I was talking about by adjusting the flop of the ears. See, I can give the feel that the head is adjusting a little bit and turning, right? Like he's looking down at something, like what's down there? That's what I was sort of thinking about in the back of my mind. How do I get that little guy to fit in there? Get that other. Now this is a cheat. I sketched his other foot in there. His foot wouldn't be up there. It would be way back behind him. But that's what we do sometimes. We cheat a little bit. Let me bend the ear a little bit more, like that. Technically, that rear foot would be connected through, if I were to draw through the shape, it'd be going through his backside and we wouldn't see it. But I'm putting it there almost as if he's shifting weight and has that left leg forward, which is going to add more visual weight to the bag itself. Okay. All right. Let me see if I can sketch another dude in here. All right. Let me get somebody. Let me get a little. What about going downhill? That's what I was thinking. Could be cool. Like a rocky hill. Good old days living in the Midwest, in Chicago, and sliding down a little. What do you call them? A little bobsled, maybe. Going down the hill, That could possibly work. I got to squeeze him in here a little bit, but I think we could still get him in there. So first thing I'm going for here is he's sitting down, and he has that bend where the lower section is the weight. And then his ears are going to be flopping back in the wind, right? Because he's going down a hill. He has some speed. And then since I'm looking towards him, I should be able to see the bottom of his feet. Should be able to see a little bit of a sideline to the bag here. And that sideline actually comes down and connects. If you've noticed me doing that, it actually connects to the feet. So that's a little trick that aids in your flour sack having proportions that are connected a little bit easier. Okay. There we go. Looks good enough to me. He's sitting there just woof, going down the sled. Let me put a little bit more perspective on the sled if I can here. Just cheating it. Just get a little bit more depth, let's say, like that. Yeah, that's cool. It's like, whoa, 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 just sliding down the hill. Okay. And let's see if I can squeeze another one in here. Try to wrap this up in just a couple more minutes. Actually, I'm pretty tight on space. So I think what I'm going to do is, let me move one or two over or around real quick. And then I think I'm just going to come back in. And what I like to do is put a little bit of tone under the drawing to get it to separate on the page a little bit more. Just pops it against part of the white page. But then again, I also like the nice sketchy quality that Sketchbook Pro delivers on their pencil. I mean, their pencil tool is really just so amazing. It's one of my favorite. I mean, yes, I use Photoshop a lot too, and I have some really good pencil brushes. What am I doing? Let me get this selected all the way. And there are some good brushes in Photoshop, but Sketchbook Pro, I mean, I feel like in animation I use the blue. So that's about it. I have it organized where I want it to be. I'm going to put a little bit of tone under there. See what it looks like to have it pop just a little bit, you know, some of the sketches. But then what I usually do is I pull the tone back quite a bit to make it lighter. That's okay right there. I might make it a little bit lighter, but I'm just going to wrap up that page. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you soon.